Hello, everyone. Welcome to AUK Talks. I'm Dan Rice, president of American University Kyiv. I'm excited to have here with us Jen Easterly, a very good friend of mine, and I'll introduce her briefly. But AUK Talks has become the primary platform in Ukraine for gathering global leaders in diplomacy, security, and business for open, candid public discussions. Today, we have the privilege of hosting, as I said, Jen Easterly. And Jen is the Director of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. As Director, Jen leads CISA's efforts for the United States to understand, manage, and reduce risks to cyber and physical infrastructure Americans rely on every day. She is a mom, a mental health advocate, a Rubik Cube enthusiast, and an aspiring electric guitarist. I love that. And before serving in her current role, Jen was the head of firm resilience at Morgan Stanley, responsible for ensuring the preparedness and response to business disrupting operational incidents and risks to the firm. She also helped build and served as the firm's global head of Morgan Stanley's Cyber Security Fusion Center, the firm's center of gravity for cyber defense. And I visited her in our office, and it was absolutely amazing how she set up that office in New York at the top floor of Morgan Stanley's building to defend Morgan Stanley against cyber attacks. Jen has a long tradition of public service, to include 2 tours in the White House as special assistants to President Obama and senior director for counterterrorism, and earlier as executive assistant to the National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice. She also served as the deputy for counterterrorism at the National Security Center. She is a 2-time recipient of the Bronze Star. Jen retired from the U.S. Army after more than 20 years of service, serving in Haiti, Balkans, Iraq, Afghanistan, responsible for standing up the Army's first cyber battalion, and she's instrumental in the design and the creation of the United States Cyber Command. A distinguished graduate of West Point, Jen holds a master's degree in philosophy, politics, and economics from Oxford, where she was a Rhodes Scholar. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2023 Sisterhood Award from the Girls Who Code, 2022 National Defense University Admiral Grace Hopper Award, 2021 Cyber Ventures Cyber Security Person of the Year Award, and the 2020 Bradley Snyder Changing the Narrative Award, and the 2018 James Foley Legacy Foundation American Hostages Freedom Award. She's also a member of a group called First Wave, where she and a bunch of friends from the Naval Academy, West Point, and one Air Force Academy graduate are members. I think we have 2 now. But thanks, Jen. Your background is absolutely incredible. Could talk about it for hours, but more importantly, welcome to AUK Talks. Thank you for the defense of America and Ukraine. And I would like to open the floor to you, Jen.
Fantastic. Well, it's wonderful to be here with you. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you. And thanks for everything that you're doing, your incredible leadership and your dedication to the Ukrainian people. I certainly share that. I'll talk a little bit about my visit there in early February, but just want to say hey to everybody. As Dan said, I am Jen Easterly, director of CISA. CISA is the newest agency in the federal government. So if you haven't heard of it, that's probably why. But we were stood up to play 2 key roles: to be America's cyber defense agency, as well as the national coordinator for critical infrastructure security and resilience. And I am thrilled to be talking to you here today as the House of Representatives and the Senate finally passed the aid bill, $60 billion for Ukraine. And as I've been personally arguing, this aid couldn't be coming at a more critical juncture. I'll start with just a quick story. In November of 2022, which some will recall one of the heaviest days of the bombing in Kyiv, we had this meeting scheduled, and we had just signed a memorandum of cooperation with our partners in Ukraine, the SSSCIP, and we were putting into place the roadmap and the plan of action of all of the things that we were going to work on together, the resources and capacity building that we would bring. And, as it turned out, the incredible lessons learned that we would gain by working with the Ukrainian cyber defenders. And so we had this meeting set up, and we figured, well, given the unrelenting Russian aggression, it would make sense. So we would just reschedule the meeting. And, as it turned out, because the building apparently that was going to host the meeting was damaged by drone strikes to the point of being unusable. But our partners didn't cancel the meeting. They quickly found an alternate location. And we held that meeting, which was a review of our cooperative work, as I said, and really helped to set the foundation for the technical cybersecurity assistance and the critical threat intel sharing efforts that we've been working on for the past 2 years. But it was, a real emblem of the thing that I have been most impressed about getting a chance to work with Ukraine and the Ukraine cyber defenders in particular, and the folks who are defending critical infrastructure. And that's just the incredible spirit of resilience, the dedication to getting the mission done, even while dealing with incredibly barbaric, both cyber attacks, but kinetic attacks. And that's been a really important thing to see for America as we think about the full range of threats that we are dealing with. And, just made me incredibly proud to stand with Ukraine and to be a partner in the defense of your sovereign rights as a peaceful and democratic nation. So, since that period of time, we've been working very closely to provide training, to run exercises, to provide equipment for cybersecurity, for operational technology, and to, frankly, learn from you all, learn from the Ukrainian cyber defenders, because actually going through real world attacks and working on these things together so that we can understand how these attacks could potentially affect infrastructure outside of Ukraine, whether that's the Viasat attacks that affected part of Europe, or things that might actually come back to the US. And it's been an incredibly rewarding partnership, frankly, probably the most rewarding with our over the past couple years. And we work with over 100 different foreign countries as part of America's cyber defense. So we work with the cyber defense entities across the world. And I would say that the partnership with Ukraine has been the most meaningful and impactful. And I was really proud to be able to go to Kyiv this past February for the International Cyber Resilience Forum. I went with my friend, Ambassador Nate Fick, who's our inaugural ambassador at large for cyber space and digital policy at the State Department. And it was actually really cool to have the leader of America's Cyber Defense Agency and America's top cyber diplomat to show the unified support for the defense of global cyberspace. And this was really brought home in all the meetings that we had with key leaders across the Ukrainian government, from the national security, the Ministry of Digital Transformation, the cyber defenders, infrastructure, the intel agencies. And to me, we really saw firsthand the spirit of resilience, the bravery of the Ukrainian people, the power of innovation, and most clearly, the absolute criticality of continued US support for the defense of Ukraine. And that's why I was so glad that our Congress finally passed that bill, because it's so fundamentally important. And so really grateful to be able to talk to you all today. Grateful for the example that you're setting for democracies across the world of bravery, courage, and resilience, and particularly grateful for the partnership that we've catalyzed over the past couple of years with the Ukrainian cyber defenders, and look to continue to strengthen our collaboration in the years to come. So with that, happy to answer any questions, Dan.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great background. When you visited Kyiv recently, you told me separately about some things that made an impression. What were the things that made the most impressions on you on your visit?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? You probably, I assume you get in the same way that I get it, that I got in. You have to take the train.
I usually
Uh,
drive. I usually drive.
from you drive. Okay, so for us, we took this train from Warsaw, and it's probably about 10 hours or so. And there with Ambassador Fick and a couple of our staff, and we left at around 2200, then around 0500 we were informed that there were missile strikes. So and they had continued for a while as we got closer. And in the town, I want to say it was probably about a half an hour out of Kyiv, they held it because the bombing was so serious. And we could actually see from the train some of the strikes, some being intercepted, some not. And we actually thought we were going to be turned back. But after a while, the RSO cleared us to be able to come in, and we came in, which I was really thankful for. But, later, as we found out, there was a lot of civilian infrastructure that was hit badly that day. And I think 6 people lost their lives. And to me, it was just a reminder of like how this was something that people on the ground were dealing with all the time, going about their lives, continuing to show that resilience, that courage. That's just a statement in terms of withstanding the barbarity of the Russian attacks. And so it was a really meaningful way to start that day, that reminder. I mean, you and I have both served in combat. So just, you know what that's like. And it had been a while since I'd been in Iraq or Afghanistan, but that reminder that this is what the Ukrainian people are dealing with every single day with incredible courage. And so once we got into Kyiv, it was, we were going over to the place where the Cyber Resilience Forum was, I think, in one of the hotels, and we stopped outside, and it was the statue. I think it was Princess Olha wearing the body armor. She needs armor. And having been a woman who in combat, who's had to wear, and at West Point, you're often wearing like men's clothes. So that very much resonated with me, this campaign to actually get women who are serving in the military equipment and uniforms that fit. So that really had an impact. And then when we got into the location of the Cyber Resilience Forum, it was pretty incredible. I mean, it was like this pulsating. It was like, it reminded me of the U2 concert that I was in the summer, because you could tell like there was incredible energy, incredible participation from partners who had come in all over the world to be part of this event. And so, overall, I was just incredibly struck by the power of resilience, the bravery of the Ukrainian people, the spirit of innovation that I saw as we got in, but then as part of the Cyber Resilience Forum. And again, it just reinforced to me the absolute criticality of our continued support and partnership and collaboration with the Ukrainian people. And just, it's worth saying that our steadfast support for Ukraine is not just an act of international solidarity or a display of American leadership or a demonstration that we will continue to honor our commitment to our allies. Our support for Ukraine is inextricably linked to US national security and the security of our homeland. And so that really resonated with me, seeing that and knowing how this could affect things here at home, where we're charged to defend our critical infrastructure from cyber attacks from the full range of adversaries. And so that, again, really, really, really was magnified to me during that trip. And we spent the day, as I mentioned, we met with a variety of partners there all across the Ukrainian government. And then it was really interesting. At the end of the day, we went to visit Ukrenergo and sat with their CEO and talked about the incredible improvements that they had made since the 2014, 2015 timeframe with Russian cyber attacks on energy infrastructure. And it was really impressive to see the evolution in how the energy sector had improved their security and resilience. And again, even as we're providing intelligence and capacity building and training, there's so much that we have learned and will learn from our Ukrainian cyber partners and from critical infrastructure that successfully withstood and is withstanding these attacks. And so the whole day was probably like one of the most meaningful things that I've done in my 3 years as director. And I was really grateful for the opportunity and for the invitation to be there.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, one of our primary investors is DTEC, the largest energy company within Ukraine, and so they're facing these attacks, kinetic attacks as well as cyber attacks constantly. So, and they're repairing all the infrastructure as quickly as they can to keep the lights on, basically. So you've led at the highest levels of the U.S. military, at the highest levels of Morgan Stanley, and now at the highest levels of the U.S. government. What leadership lessons or traits do you think cross over all of those different areas?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I could throw this one back to you as well, Dan. So, I often think about this because we both started out at West Point and we've done so many different things in our career, president of a university, right? I'm director of a federal agency. And leadership is a great challenge, a great privilege, but it's not rocket science. I actually think it comes down to two basic things. Like one is you have to lead by example. Don't ever ask anyone to do anything that you wouldn't do, and constantly model the behavior that you expect from yourself. So, we know as leaders, people are always looking at us. Everywhere we go, what we say, what we do, how we act. And it's our job to inspire others to do really hard missions that they don't think that they can do. It's incredibly important to keep people's confidence by acting with integrity and moral courage, and honesty, and the values that we both grew up with of duty, honor, and country. And so it's the lead by example. And then the second, I often talk about leading by the platinum rule. The golden rule is treat others as you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others as they want to be treated. And it really is predicated on taking the time to understand the motivations, the aspirations, the talents, the capabilities, the backgrounds of the people on your team. And because I think that's the way you get the most out of them. Very few people wake up in the morning and say, how can I screw up today? Everybody wants to do a good job, particularly in the military, the government. You're working for relatively little pay because you believe in the mission. You raise your right hand to serve, to preserve and defend the Constitution. And so really figuring out how to get the most out of your people and how to build that as a team with an ethos, I think is just, I keep those in mind no matter what I'm leading, those two basic principles. And then I look at what's the thing that as the leader of an organization, what are the things that only I can do? And then try to delegate and empower the rest of those things. So I set the vision, I set the strategy, I set the culture, the organizational culture. And hopefully that's something that's co-created, because that's really important to have, grassroots buy-in of the organizational culture you're building, but then delegate the rest and empower your team and inspire them to be successful. And I found that to be effective strategies in the military at Morgan Stanley and here at CISA. And, at the end of the day, it's hard to do, but it's not complicated.
Great. I completely agree with that. What in your role, you see all kinds of different threats. When you see Russia, obviously kinetically invading and attacking Ukraine, also every area, cyber, they're also attacking Estonia, they're attacking all the Baltics. But what threats are we learning from these situations that help us defend America?
Yeah. I mean, when you think about this, right, one of the things that really occurred to me as I was kind of thinking about Russian attacks on Ukraine, and then the potential if Russia were successful. After Kyiv, I was in Warsaw. And it was after Putin had given an interview to an American journalist. And I think it is not, it would not be far-fetched to see if there was success in Ukraine, that there would be an attempt to go after other countries in the region, like Poland, like the Baltic states. And I think we need to be very, very clear-eyed. It's one of the reasons why I think American support for Ukraine is so vitally important to global security, US national security, homeland security. But I also think about threats that we're facing now from China, frankly. And when you think about China, which has expressed this quote unquote no limits partnership with Russia, we're dealing right now with threats from Chinese cyber actors who have burrowed deep into our critical infrastructure in an attempt to do something similar, to do disruption and destruction in the event of an invasion of Taiwan. And I think the thing to keep in mind is these threats are not siloed. These threats are all connected. And President Xi has made it pretty clear his intent to reunify with Taiwan, whether that's militarily or peacefully. And I think if he saw that the US was no longer supporting Ukraine and that Russia was able to take it over, that would be a real signal that, well, perhaps America just doesn't stand by its partners, just doesn't support its allies, and won't support Taiwan in the event of an invasion. So I just think we have to look at these things in a very connected way. And we constantly have to be working with our partners to understand the full threat picture. In a place like cyber, in a realm like cyber, there are no borders, right? What we see happening in Ukraine could happen here from a cyber perspective. And frankly, we thought, we were very concerned around the time of the full-scale invasion that because of US support to Ukraine, that we would see massive retaliatory attacks on our critical infrastructure here at home. And that's what motivated our Shields Up campaign, where we brief critical infrastructure on the risks and we put out a lot of guidance on how to mitigate that threat. So we were happy not to see specific attacks here. I think that's because they've been very, very focused within Ukraine. But again, these things are not disconnected, and we have to, in cyber, where everything is so connected, digitized, vulnerable, interdependent, we have to be able to collaborate with our closest partners to defend global cyberspace and reduce risk to democracies around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like the axis of evil is lining up with the state sponsors of terror, Iran and North Korea, both providing missiles and drones and all kinds of weapons to Russia to then attack the Ukrainian civilian population. And then the Iranians lining up with the Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis. Obviously, you're seeing these adversaries all come together. Are they also coming together from an IT cyber standpoint? Are they sharing information on how to attack, the free world?
In terms of what we see broadly, is we see certainly collaboration at the strategic level. And when China talks about a no limits partnership, I think we can make certain assumptions that that partnership can extend into many realms. And so without getting in the tactical weeds, cyber has become a significant component of war, right? It's the sea, air, land, space, cyberspace, the domains of war. And so, and we've seen cyber, in terms of cyber war, we've seen cyber as a significant component to the Ukraine war. Now, sometimes it gets overshadowed because of the barbarity of the kinetic attacks, but make no mistake, those, and are people on the talk can say much better than me, but certainly there has been a significant cyber component, and I believe going forward there will be a significant cyber component to any major conflict, whether that's above or below the threshold of war. As I mentioned earlier, we have actually identified Chinese cyber actors operating within our US critical infrastructure and have identified them and have eradicated them in multiple critical infrastructure sectors here in the US, from transportation, communication, water, power. And so we need to ensure that we are learning the lessons that Ukraine is demonstrating around resilience, because there will be disruption and we have to be prepared for it. We have to plan for it. We have to be able to respond and to recover, to minimize the impact on the American people in the event of a significant attack. And these are some of the really important lessons that we're learning, not just cyber resilience or operational resilience, but frankly, the incredible resilience of the Ukrainian people. I worry that, just given in our climate, Dan, and you and I grew up around the same time, like Cold War, that the American people are becoming so disconnected and things are becoming so politicized, that at the end of the day, it's affecting our ability to be resilient to real threats. And we have to take that lesson. I mean, it's incredible to see this unified resilience of the Ukrainian people. It's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely inspiring and amazing. And but they can't hang on indefinitely. What do you see this? It's outside of the normal cyber discussion, but what do you see the impact of the supplemental and the weapons and the arms? What's the impact that
Yeah.
you envision?
I mean, I really hope that, and I know, it's not my area, but I understand that the Department of Defense is already moving forward in terms of the weapon systems that will go forward. And it's incredibly important. And I think the support to date has made a real difference. And I think that with this additional support, I think that can make a real difference. I do think it's worth noting, and this support should have come sooner, frankly. Very, very necessary. But I think it's worth noting that, while Ukraine is indeed experiencing challenges in the shortage of ammunition and weapons, what it has achieved to date is nothing short of extraordinary.
Yeah.
Facing off against a nuclear power with a military many times its size in manpower and equipment. And Russia's been on the offensive for a while, sending large numbers of new troops into the fight and taken comparatively little territory and still facing massive losses. So we need to recognize the realities as it is on the ground, but we also need to give credit to the incredible Ukrainian defenders for what they've been able to achieve, which, by the way, I think nobody expected that. Putin himself thought that this was going to be a cakewalk into Kyiv.
Yeah.
And now it's over 2 years later. And I think, the bravery is just astonishing and, incredibly impressive. And frankly, like, the weapons will help.
I agree. Yeah, the magnitude of this size of supplemental, the aid, is just enormous. $61 billion. It's so amazing. The impact that I believe it'll have on a battlefield immediately next week will be incredible, and support all of the Ukraine armed forces that's done so well. But also, I think it's going to help inspire the Europeans to give even more. And so I think the world's coming together to recognize the threat. Do you feel that when you work with your NATO partners, or are they all starting to recognize the threat that they didn't recognize 3 years ago?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I've had a lot of meeting with very senior officials in NATO and across Europe, and again in Poland particularly, which I think spends probably more than any country kind of relative to its GDP. I forget what the percentage is now, but I think people realize this is not a hollow threat. At the end of the day, I think if you listen to that talk that I mentioned of the interview with the journalist, it was pretty clear that Putin will not stop if he takes over Ukraine. And so, we need to realize as Americans, if that in fact happens, if we see, God forbid, like the Warsaw Pact reforming, which is, probably, which is sort of, I think we've seen indications that's what Putin wants, it will mean that we will probably have to put troops back in places where we drew down. We'll probably have to increase our defense budget significantly. I mean, you and I grew up in the Reagan era, right? I mean, think about how different the size of the military and the defense budget then was.
Yep.
So the amount of money that we're spending to support Ukraine is tiny compared to what it could be
Absolutely.
if there's a new Cold War.
Mhm.
And I think the Europeans absolutely recognize that. So and are for the most part remaining steadfast. And it's great to see that, because it's another thing that I think Putin didn't expect. I don't think he expected the international solidarity in support of Ukraine. And we should, the history will be written of this period of time, and it'll be written in a way that ends with the victory of Ukraine. But we should be very mindful of all of the lessons that are being learned. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And
Mhm.
we should remember that as we think about what our leadership means for the world.
Absolutely. And to have two new members of NATO is absolutely incredible. That was not the response I think Putin was expecting. And
100%.
soon, absolutely, and hopefully soon to have Ukraine as the 33rd member to join. We've got a number of questions from our students. So I just wanted to make sure we get to some of those. So Jen, with all the things you have to deal with within cyber, I mean, there's now so many changes within artificial intelligence, augmented reality, 3G, 4G networks. Like, how do you tackle all of it simultaneously when the adversaries are trying to take advantage of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of just hit on AI because it's where it's taken a lot of my team's time over the last year. And just to sort of lay out, so we're about 3,400 people now. Our biggest team is our cyber team, but we actually have folks that focus on physical security. So we have a team that focuses on chemical security, the Office of Bombing Prevention focused on IEDs, focused on school safety, on exercises, on secure interoperable emergency first responder comms. So we look at the full range of threats to critical infrastructure. And while we do look at AI in terms of the good things it can do for cyber defenders and for infrastructure owners and operators, we've been very focused on how to mitigate risk to the full range, physical and cyber, to critical infrastructure from threats of AI. And so, and that was a task specifically given to us by the president in the artificial intelligence executive order. And so in the next couple days, I think we're actually going to put out a guide to how do we manage cross-sector risk from AI threats. So it's one big thing we're working on. We're also doing some pilots in terms of how do we use AI for cyber defense. We're working with government colleagues on how to do red teaming to find vulnerabilities in AI systems that may be embedded in critical infrastructure. And so we've done a ton of work on that. Broadly, I will say, though, the argument that I've been making at the kind of meta level, the strategic level, is that these capabilities, unlike technology for decades, frankly, have to be built with security prioritized. I mean, the reason we have a multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity industry is that technology never had to have any cybersecurity standards. The incentives were about speed to market and cost and cool features. Security became a bolt-on. And frankly, it's led to software that's just full of vulnerabilities that can be exploited by threat actors. And that's why we've put a lot of effort into this secure by design initiative, saying, and where this is really relevant, we had some good conversations with Ukraine, with our Ukrainian partners on this, is the bad news is a lot of the infrastructure has been destroyed and needs to be rebuilt. The good news is it can be built to be much more secure than it was before. And that's actually a very good thing, because part of what we're dealing with and what we dealt with even at a firm that invests billions of dollars in technology like Morgan Stanley is legacy technology and tech debt. And it's very hard to continue to layer on security controls into legacy technology that was not built to be secure. So one of the great things that Ukraine can do is, as you rebuild this technology, is to ensure it's secure at the get-go, and that will reduce the ability of threat actors to be able to exploit it.
That's beyond my pay grade. So so there's some questions here that let's see. Devices could be small and behaving faster, could require higher control by the security forces. Or what that's referencing.
Let me. Oh, there are a lot of questions. Okay, which one are you at? Small and behaving faster and could require higher control by security forces.
One of the ones that's most interesting right now to me is that, some of the devices that were attacking Ukraine were using public 3G and 4G networks. How do you defend against that, against an attacker? Is there any?
I mean, a lot of this comes down to the security of the technology itself, to be frank. This is why we've been working with international partners to not use technology, for example, like Huawei or ZTE, that we know can be easily exploited by adversaries, by serious cyber adversaries like the PRC. So, and that's again to my point about putting new infrastructure, new communications infrastructure in place. We need to ensure that it is trusted infrastructure. And I think that's, goes back to my point about secure by design technology. Technology needs to be designed and built and tested and deployed to have security baked in, not bolted on.
Mm-hmm. And how do you go from cyber defense to cyber offense? And what are we doing as a country that you can share? Obviously, there's certain things you don't want to share, but there was policy change several years ago that we would be able to do offensive operation against cyber attacking units, correct?
Yeah, so I'm the nation's head goalie. So, we're the cyber defense agency. So while there was a part of my life where I was on the offense, I am no longer on the offense. So I might not be the best person to speak to that. What I can say is, we work very, very closely with DoD, in particular with US Cyber Command. And one of the things where we've really benefited from, that I think where our foreign partners have very much benefited from, is these hunt forward missions that the Cyber National Mission Force in DoD has been doing, where with partners going on partner networks and looking for malware and signatures of adversary activity, so that we can use that information to then understand the threat and be more proactive on shoring up our networks based on knowledge of that malware. So that's really, really useful. So when they go on the offense, in terms of at least hunting on networks, we benefit from that. And then we hunt on networks here in the US, working with civilian critical infrastructure, and we use that information. We put it in our advisories. So for example, in terms of Chinese cyber actors, we just put out a big advisory on the 7th of February about, here are the techniques, the tactics, the tradecraft, and here are the mitigations to put in place to prevent intrusions into critical infrastructure. And we, of course, have done that with the full range of Russian cyber capabilities. We have a whole Shields Up as part of CISA.
Mhm.
webpage, CISA.gov. We have a Shields Up page that talks all about Russian cyber tactics and techniques and how to protect against them. And we benefit a lot from learning from Ukrainian cyber defenders who are like in there in battle every day.
Mhm. Fantastic. We have Jen, we have two schools. We have the School of Business and we have the School of IT, the EPAM School of IT, which is a Fortune 500 company and has a lot of our employees within Ukraine. For the IT students, what are your thoughts as they're studying IT, they're getting ready to enter this market? What should they be thinking about from what kind of jobs to look for? Where do you think the growth areas are within this industry? And what should they be thinking?
Well, we have a world that is practically entirely digitized. So there will always be an important need for people who understand computers, and even more so, who understand how to secure digital capabilities, because digital capabilities underpin all of our critical infrastructure that we all rely upon. And as devices get more advanced, as they get smarter, there will be a greater and greater need for those types of IT people and security engineers. The thing that I would say to all of our security developers out there is to help us be part of the solution. When I talk about creating secure technology, I don't know how many computer scientists are out there, but it actually matters the type of code that you write. When you think about coding languages, we're in a lot of universities talking about what's called memory safe coding. So a lot of people grew up coding with C and C++, which are inherently unsafe coding systems because they introduce a huge number of vulnerabilities into infrastructure. And so we've really been trying to advance this whole idea of memory safe capabilities, in particular coding with things like Rust. And why this matters so much, Dan, is if you're able to create safer code, then there are less holes in your infrastructure. When I say holes, like digital computer holes that bad actors can exploit. You can just think of them as like a digital door. You leave your digital doors open with bad code. And so anybody who's studying computer science should also be studying computer security. And anybody who's serious about computer security should understand how to develop with secure code.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, as you look at those gaps and those weaknesses, I mean, how much do you look back on your training from the military, from the principles of war, and how much do you use the war principles to apply to cyber defense?
Yeah, I will tell you that having been at the National Security Agency, having been on the intel side, having been the first commander of the Army Cyber Battalion, which was more of an offensive capability, it's really important. It's one of the most important things. I think the most important job for director of CISA was to be at Morgan Stanley, because we work so much with the private sector. All of our work is by, with, and through partners, because we're not a regulator. We're not law enforcement. We're not an intel agency. We're 41% veterans, but we're not a military agency. So it's all by, with, and through partners. And, I don't know if you remember Bill McCraven, the
Oh,
commander of JSOC, he used to always say, like, you can't surge trust. And so it's all about like building these partnerships and relationships now, to be able to build a global cyber defense. But part of what you have to understand about the adversaries is how they operate. And that's really what I learned from an offensive perspective, is you have to know how the really sophisticated adversaries, sort of how they think. As an intel officer, you're always like putting on the J2 hat, like you're playing the adversary. And so developing what I call adversarial empathy, being able to put yourself in the shoes of the bad guys, is really helpful when you're trying to build more effective defenses.
I love the partnering comments. We're actually partnering currently with American University. Kyiv is partnering with a number of American companies, and we have a lot of our students are coming to the U.S. this summer. So we have interns coming to JP Morgan, Blackstone, 7-Eleven, Casey's General Stores, BAM Financial. I'm hoping your old firm possibly. So we have students coming in. We'd love to do an event in New York, introduce them to you if possible. But they'll be working with those U.S. firms, and the IT side will be learning a lot. The business side, the marketing side will be learning a lot. But we're trying to generate U.S. partners that can have a long-term cultural relationship with American University of Kyiv to help our students experience, but also bring the best of Ukraine to America and bring the best of America to Ukraine. So, so that's I think we're getting close on time, Jen. Just any things you want to say to wrap up? We certainly appreciate your support of Ukraine and the U.S.
No, just thank you for the opportunity. It's really meaningful to be able to spend time with you and the students today. I'm really proud to be able to stand with Ukraine as a partner, as somebody who believes strongly in the Ukrainian people and the fight against aggression and barbarity from Russia. And incredibly pleased that we get to do this today after the Senate has passed an incredibly important funding bill, and excited for the weapons, the ammunition to make it over there as soon as possible. But I wouldn't bet against the Ukrainian people. I think with the courage, with the resilience, with the innovation, and with the steadfast support of the United States and European partners, Ukraine will be victorious and will be right there as your cyber defender partner. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And next time you come to Ukraine, we have to have you come visit American University of Kyiv, see the American flag flying with the Ukrainian flag high above it on the Dnipro.
I would love that, Dan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for all you do.
You bet.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody. Thanks for joining AUK Talks.